Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night we talked about May I Have Some More. It's an old Dickens novel about a orphan boy sent to a workhouse, and it's slavery. That's pretty much it. It's slavery for children. And in the tradition of English literature, the children are fed gruel at the end of the day. And this little boy, who's worked very hard, is still hungry. He stands up and he walks up to the masters of the house and says, "May I have some more, please?" And because he wasn't cowering and beaten and broken, because he was dealing with reality and not the fantasy world that they were demanding that he live in, it basically started a riot, a chaos amongst the masters of the house. And I wonder sometimes if we can do that. And I hate saying we because that presupposes that you're in this with me. And I can't say you or they because that presupposes that I believe that any of you will do anything. What it really gets down to is I. I will do something, I will not do something. I will make a decision, and I hope it's the right one. But wouldn't it be amazing, the chaos and the confusion it would cause our masters if we said to them, "May I have some more?" And don't have to say please. Right now, and it's August 10th, 2011, there has been rioting in London now for days because the police and the Nazi state of Britain have been, well, they're thugs. And they like shooting people for fun. It's very American. Only this time they went too far. They shot one man too many. And there's been rioting now for 3 days in London. And basically, the masters are, they're terrified. They don't know what to do. This is not going according to plan. You see, in the UK, in London in particular, every street corner is covered by surveillance cameras. There's cameras everywhere. We in the States are accustomed to surveillance cameras in our work and at street corners, but in England apparently they've gone mad with cameras, and they presuppose that they could control their population with the threat of "we've got you on camera." Well, that theory is not working really well right now. And I guess somebody asked for "May I have some more?" And the result is the country is just ground to a halt. And it's what I saw in New Zealand. New Zealand is the best example of social engineering I've ever seen, mind control. But when you get that many people in and under mind control, they're angry all the time. And I've never seen such violence in people as I saw in New Zealand. And it's because they're afraid. And they're afraid to say, "May I have some more? May I have some more justice? May I have some more reality?" And they're the most angry people I've ever seen, the most gibberingly mad of the master's servants I've ever seen. And so tonight I thought we might chat about addiction is selfishness. Because it's quite obvious that our masters are addicted to power. Now, our masters are parasites. And we have to get over the concept of New World Order and conspiracy theories and whether our masters are soulless reptiles from another world. This is all beside the point. This has nothing to do with reality. I have chosen to deal with reality. I don't care if they have a soul or not. I don't care if God or the devil exists. I don't care because it has nothing to do with me. What has to do with me, the I, is I don't have a job. I have 25 years in international IT and corporate management, and I'm too overqualified to work for anyone because everybody is afraid of me. More to the point, making money is no longer the issue. Power is. So I made the decision to flee the United States. I hadn't had a date in years, and women were blaming me for everything that they could think of because it was the in thing to do. Thanks to television and radio and magazines, And I fled to New Zealand. I made the decision. Got there, discovered it was even worse. It was the future of the United States, if the United States actually had a future. And then I, myself, made the decision, even though there's this old witch who keeps showing up in my life and pushing me in certain directions, and if I said no, she'd probably just leave me alone finally, but I keep saying yes. But our masters are addicted to power. Even though they can't boil an egg, they can't make a cup of coffee. They've never stood in the line at the ATM. They've never ran out of money trying to buy groceries. They'd starve to death in their own kitchens, even if those kitchens were filled with food, because they don't know how to do anything. They're addicted to power. It's a very black magic, Satan ritual sort of a thing. But addiction really is selfishness. And I've seen addiction myself so many times. I grew up with CIA assets who thought themselves to be agents. I grew up with U.S. Army Air Corps intelligence street thugs. The scum of the earth, real, true filth. And then, of course, that's the heart and soul of the CIA. But they were all drunks, all of them. The number of drunken private pilots I knew who have died because they actually got into a plane with 11 other people. And they were all drunk, and they take off from the runway, and they don't actually get too far. They actually sort of do a barrel roll into a line of parked planes, and everything blows up. Addiction is selfishness. There's no such thing as an illness, alcoholism, an illness for cocaine, an illness for heroin. There is no such thing as a illness that makes you drink. You drink because you're selfish. You take drugs because you're selfish. You want to feel good, you want to feel better. And from my point of view, from what I've seen over and over and over again, is that people who drink, people who do drugs, are selfish. They are important, the rest of us are not. They try to convince us that drinking alcohol is a disease. Because then when they get in their car and they murder people, it's not their fault, it's a disease. No, it's not true. The problem in the United States particularly is the judges are all drunks too. And alcoholism, I don't know. A drunk is a drunk. It's really time we just call things the way they are. One man wrote into me the other day and objected to my use of calling people cattle. And I haven't responded to him because, frankly, what's there to say? Unless we call things by what they are, we can be manipulated, we can be used. We'll talk about that someday, the power of words and symbols. Actually, go to jordanmaxwell.com or go to YouTube and look up any videos that Jordan Maxwell has done with Mr. Jeff Rentz. And Jordan Maxwell is a genius. He's been doing this from the 60s. He'll explain to you the power of words and symbols in our society. So it's absolutely, utterly essential that you and I call things the way we see them. We call things by what they really are. And someone who drinks until they're stupid is a drunk. There's no disease involved. It's selfishness. They've decided that they're important, and you and I are not. They're important, and so the rest of us have to pick up the pieces after they've done their damage. I was so desperately lonely at one point, I actually let a cocaine addict, a girl, move in with me, just so I could have a girl in the house. And the few times I actually saw her not on cocaine, she was a sweet, lovely little creature. But unfortunately, those were passing moments that passed very, very quickly. Most of the time she was on what she called medical-grade cocaine. And this was one of the examples where you discover that Coca-Cola, the company, is the only company in the United States that has a license to import coca leaves, cocaine leaves. And then they process, for whatever reason, cocaine into a syrup. And what's left over is this powder, which they turn around and sell to dentists as a pain medication. Cocaine is traditionally used in real countries as just that. It's a medicine. It dulls your senses. 100 years ago, cocaine was legal in the United States, and Coca-Cola 100 years ago said the active ingredient in Coca-Cola was cocaine. It was sold for medical reasons. So anyway, Coca-Cola, which is yet another front company for the CIA all over the world, used to be a joke in America in the 60s that wherever there was a Coca-Cola bottling plant in the world, the CIA was operating there. It was actually an open joke. We don't laugh about it anymore. There's actually a Edward G. Robinson movie about this very subject. He was the manager of a Coca-Cola bottling plant somewhere in Eastern Europe. And the movie was about how it was the CIA front. I've got to find that movie again. But anyway, I was living with this girl. She was very pretty. And she got medical-grade cocaine from her other boyfriend. And she kept offering me, would you like some cocaine? It's medical grade. I'm going, no, thank you. And she thought it was quite all right because it was medical grade cocaine. And I finally had to move out of our bedroom and move downstairs because I just couldn't stand the abuse anymore. And the fact that apparently it gives you a sugar rush because our bedroom floor had about 3 inches of candy wrappers, used candy wrappers on the floor. It was quite obscene. And finally, the only way I could get rid of her was to tell her I was turning off the utilities. That frightened her. But she did cocaine because she was young, she was pretty, and she knew that some man, some woman, would tolerate her and pay her bills. No such thing as addiction. I knew another girl, and she was, let's see, I can't remember exactly. She was either a coke or a crack addict. I can't remember. It must have been coke. Her parents had died from, that's right, her parents had died from crack use. And she had found, her mother died, and then she found her father dead on the floor when she was 5 years old. I can't imagine the pain she was in. But one of the times she was actually out of prison, because in the United States they put addicts, quote unquote, in prison instead of simply drawing them out because it makes somebody money. One of the times I met her when she was out of prison, she told me, no, Charlie, I don't. She was quite offended. Oh, Charlie, I would never do cocaine. That's what killed my parents. I do crack. And she was very proud of that. And again, she did it because she was selfish. The amount of money and time I spent on her, with her, she just threw everything away for the drug. And there's no such thing, from what I've seen, of a traceable illness genetically linked somehow. She was in pain, and she wanted relief from the pain, and other people didn't provide her. None of her boyfriends or girlfriends provided her with the relief she needed. But the drug did. And as she threw her life away, and I actually watched as her body disintegrated. Her teeth were turning black and falling out. She just threw her whole life away because she was selfish. I've known quite a few drug addicts. I didn't realize that taking massive levels of drugs would actually physically change your body. I actually knew one girl. Her eyeballs had gone from white to brown. And she had once been very pretty, but her facial features actually were malformed because of the drug. She took so much of whatever drug it was that her physical features were actually changing. I would walk down the street with this girl, and when she was clean, she was very sweet. But she really looked like a hideous dwarf. And people would actually stop and stare at her, forgetting themselves. And then, no matter what I did for her, she went back to the drug because she knew somebody else would take care of her. And this is a repetition that I've seen. I'm 53 this month. It's August. And I've seen this over and over and over and over and over again. I grew up with drunks. So needless to say, I have very little patience for them. And even though I've tried over and over and over again to help people who are drug addicts, to help people who are drunks, it's always the same. They are important. I never was. So my interest in drunks and drug addicts, potheads, coke fiends, whatever you call them, is zero now. I'll just stand up and walk away because I know that you're just selfish. You only care about yourself. You don't care about anyone else. You don't care about your children. You don't care. The number of women I know who have just thrown their children away for their drug is quite astonishing. But they don't care because they're important and you and I are not. And I think we get enough of that from our masters. We don't need it from each other. So next time you meet an addict, someone who has an illness because they can't stop drinking or they can't stop doing drugs, just walk away because you will never, ever pull them up. Honestly, you won't. They'll just pull you down into the sewer with them, and they just want the company. They want somebody to pay the bills and to clean up after them after they vomited all over the floor again. They don't care. I knew a girl in New Zealand. She was a drunk beyond anything I'd ever possibly imagined. She came into my house one night, passed out on the bed, which I thought was at least, promising. A few hours later, she woke up long enough to start to projectile vomit for about 5 minutes all over my bed. And after about 5 minutes of projectile vomiting, and I'm still puzzled by how that was even possible, she was still pretty much asleep. And she somehow managed to find the largest, warmest puddle of her own vomit. She actually put her face down into this pool of her own vomit on top of my $3,000 comforters. I had 3 of them because I was freezing to death. And she actually, with a big smile on her face, snuggled her face into her own vomit and went back to sleep. I don't think there's much more to say after that. I discovered, as I told foreigners and other New Zealanders about this, New Zealanders took it as a matter of stride. Oh yeah, regular day for us. We're always projectile vomiting in our own beds. So what? Men and women. Of course, the foreigners I told this story to were horrified and disgusted. She said, a woman did that? I said, yeah. That's how unhappy New Zealanders are, by the way. They don't drink to forget. They drink to die. And this woman wanted to die. But in her selfishness, ruined $3,000 worth of comforters, and I couldn't even afford to pay for electricity to keep the place warm. So I had my cats and my comforters, and that's the only thing that stood between me and freezing to death in Wellington, New Zealand. Couldn't be bothered. She took another holiday, went traveling. Addiction is selfishness. I think I'll pass on my traditional closing because doesn't seem appropriate. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Blue Hawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel fighting his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.